Story.
years old.
Huh?
The post office guy was in Toy Story.
You're
wasn't he?
right. You just didn't help yourself, Dave. I'm just saying.
She said it while she was 5 years old.
No.
All right, it is 6 o'clock, and I'm calling the planning committee to order. We have a long night ahead of us. My agenda has 8 items, so we're hitting the ground running here. Okay, so the first item on the agenda is design review consultant. So this is the long story of us seeking a consultant to help us with our historic district guidelines, our code regarding the design review commission, etc. So if you recall, we passed this in August, but did not have an emergency clause, so didn't really take effect until this month. So the next step would be to send out letters to the list of consultants that we established. And I wasn't exactly sure how to do it. I was kind of going to impose on you, Bob, and I have language, simple, actually it would be probably an email, not a formal letter, because all the consultants gave us an email address, and just send them the email inviting them to send us something, response, and then attach the RFQ to that. We could also post it, I suppose, on our website. I think Kent did that. So that's another thing we can do. But if I forward that information to you?
Sure, we'll post it in multiple places.
Okay.
Establish a deadline for every.
Oh, yeah, so how long?
Probably 3 weeks.
Okay.
Most of the companies are going to have a package already assembled,
Right.
kind of a marketing package that they can fire back.
All right. All right. Note of that, 3 weeks.
And of course, we try to make sure we hit the next committee meeting with information. So that's when we advertise for bids, when council will approve, say, the paving program, when council will authorize the mayor to enter contract. So then we could back it out to board of control, and then, that's the process of where, do we want to advertise Thursday, or do we want to wait 2 weeks to advertise? That's all plays into how we do it.
Yeah, and I was assuming when we get the responses, we'll bring them back here, and then we'll talk about it. Because, I mean, there's a lot of possibilities. And, one of them is conceivable. We may not find somebody adequate to do the job, or costing too much. We've talked about those things. So we don't have a specific timeline involved. We just want to give them the adequate time to respond, and 3 weeks should be enough then. All right, so this doesn't require any city and council action, but I'll forward everything. Does anybody have any questions or concerns about this? Okay, somewhat related, the next item is there's a Ohio History Fund grant that some on the Design Review Commission were considering applying for the purpose of perhaps paying this consultant. Now, I don't know a whole lot about that grant. I did read what was forwarded in the email exchange, and I don't know if this would qualify. The only issue that we'd have to resolve if we did this, we'd need an ordinance authorizing the mayor to apply for the grant, and the grant is due by September 27th. Now, the way I would say we would move forward if we do would be to put the onus on the Design Review Commission. I don't know, was this discussed at your last meeting, Cliff, or was just some of the people from the commission came up with this?
I forgot last month's meeting, we didn't have one this month.
Okay, so this probably was not discussed.
I don't remember.
Okay. But, I mean, somebody has to do the grant proposal. I can respond to them that you can go ahead and prepare the grant. Now, we would need a special to approve authorization by the mayor to apply for the grant. Is that okay? You want to go ahead and do that?
Yeah, I think if council's all right with it, we could schedule the special. It's got to be before September 27th, so next probably before committee of the whole, next week, right? Our next meeting, if everybody's all right with it. And this is just to approving to apply for the grant.
Right. Okay. You
Do-
okay with that?
Yes, but do we know the amount of the grant? And it is a matching grant. The Ohio History Fund grants are matching grants.
I don't, there's a link to see recent recipients. I don't see a fund amount in here. The application, yeah, I probably should have done my homework before I did this. It looks like it's a total of $1 million in the
In
fund.
a year, yeah.
But I don't know if they have a specific amount that, that they
Okay.
award or
I was
minimum
just
or
curious,
anything
yeah.
like that.
I would think we should proceed with it if it's available.
Yeah, I was looking through a while back, the past recipients and their proposals, not the amounts, and none of them were applying for something like this. It does, yeah, it says history projects, including repairs, rehabilitation of historic buildings, museum collections, storage initiatives, education programs, digitization of archival materials, and historic photographs. So it's more like the active historic preservation stuff, doing stuff, rather than reviewing code and, but I don't know, you never know. It could be a year when they have enough money to support a well-written grant.
Yeah, it looks like the grant recipients for 2022 had ranges of like close to $20,000 down to about $3,000.
Yeah.
So if we could get any of
Any,
that, it would
yeah.
be beneficial.
Okay. So we'll go ahead and move this forward, and then I'll respond to the people who are interested to see if they can go ahead and put together a proposal. All right, moving along. So the next item is board and commission agendas and minutes online. So I'm going to throw this over to you, Andrew.
Yeah, I just had a request, really, and the mayor's not here, so, but our boards and commissions that we have, we're putting together agendas, we have minutes for them, and looking at our neighboring communities, some of them, you know, the 10 a.m. meetings that a lot of us can't make, we'd like to look at the agendas. Is there a way that we could get those put online just for display? I think that's the two requests right now. I think the additional thing is that we have the recording here. If they're taking place in City Hall, it is always an option to record those meetings. The goal with this was to make it useful so that anybody could hit record and use it. So I think my request at this point is just one, to get the agenda and minutes online so that so it'd be viewable to myself and the public at large at this point. But all of those that are listed on our website, so all those, well, outside of civil service, but design review, planning, and Board of Zoning Appeals were the three that I was really looking at.
Andrew, how far back do you want to go with that?
I think just moving forward at this point,
Okay.
and I don't know what that entails with, if that's full spectrum, that would be a request there to create something on this page specific to that. But I know Chelsea does it for council. If there's any questions on that, she might be able to help out. Sorry, I just volunteered you.
If you want CICs, you could reach out to Donna.
Is CIC, that would be something that would be included in this, that could be included?
They're on our website. It's
It's kind of a private entity. I don't know if it's a city committee. I don't know. There's something, I mean, if they're okay with it.
well, they want more presence on our website.
Are they, how, do you know, you're on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Are they like a 503C or anything like that? Because I don't know if they're compelled to.
I know that they don't have to, at least last I heard, they don't have to follow the sunshine laws. That's why they've kept up with the Zoom meetings.
Oh, okay. So if they don't have to follow the sunshine laws, it's not
But
compelling
they
for
want
them.
a larger presence on our website.
Looks like they are a 501c3, at least listed on the website. But I think just thinking about those three committees, if we can do CIC, I think that would be great. to have insight there, but, so the 3 committees that I was thinking about was, I keep wanting to say civil service because it's first, not civil service. So design review, planning commission, and board of zoning appeals. The other 2 that are listed in addition to that is Parks Board and Shade Tree. But I feel like I'm plugged into the parks. And we have Calfee up here who can provide the information. So,
Yeah, but that stuff wouldn't be available just for us. I mean, if someone in the community wanted to look at the stuff from the
That's
Parks
the
Board.
important part, 'cause I think that,
yeah. Rob, Cliff had something. I don't know if you want to.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Chelsea, excuse me. Chelsea and I have had a conversation, I think, at that one meeting up at the library here about the actual recordings of our meetings. Can they be looked at as full minutes for the meeting? Because I know in the Design Review Commission, at the beginning, when we had a new secretary there, the minutes were like 6 and 7 pages long, which was too much. And now we're down to like 3 sentences. So Chelsea and I talked about, well, Chelsea, you tell me again, what do you think that they say in Robert's Rules of Order or whatever about taking minutes? What do you try to get across
So
by doing the minutes?
minutes have to be sufficient enough so that if somebody wasn't attending the meeting, they would know what was going on. And also enough to where people understood how a decision to create legislation came to be.
Well, my thought on that is we spent a lot of money on this thing lately here. And it only takes throws of 2 switches, am I correct? One in there to turn it on so it's recorded. Is it legal? Is it legal? Is that the actual minutes for people that are outside of the?
yes.
We're
A lot of communities do use the recordings as their posted minutes.
Because I've tried to get back to get the minutes now, and I know sometimes the recordings are available, but sometimes they haven't been legible, or you can't hear them.
Yeah.
So it'd be better that if it was on there, not just the little recording, because what happens at our meeting, she puts the hockey puck out there, that is the speaker, and it doesn't always pick up well. But anyway, that's just a question of is maybe we should talk to Semino is what is legal about. I'm all for having it all online, push the button and be able to hear the whole meeting.
Yeah.
That's my thought. I don't know, Rob, what your thoughts are on.
I've been in different organizations that did it different ways. Sometimes the recordings are used simply by the secretary to help craft the printed minutes, and then the recordings are destroyed. But as long as the printed meeting minutes are approved, that's fine. I don't know of any restriction that says you can't just use the recording as the minutes. Does the Design Review Commission do the video or just audio?
Audio.
See, it would be better, for me, the efficiency would be to record all our meetings, put them up on YouTube, and then people can just go there to see what they want. To some people, that might be a little challenging with the technology, and it's hard to follow an agenda, sort of in a video presence. If you have it written, you could scan ahead. So I don't know, there might be some challenges from some people not having printed minutes. But I don't know that there's any restriction to say you have to have printed minutes as opposed to video recording or audio recording.
Let me back up on that question. We haven't had anything used the new here. I asked before the last meeting, last month when it was there, and even though the training had happened, it wasn't used. And I'm not sure where we'll stand at the next meeting because of that. So, you know, there's a lot of money here, and it's technology that's available to us. Why not use it?
I agree with you.
Right.
100%.
Right?
I don't know, does Julie know how to use the equipment?
We ran through a quick training, walking it through. I think, Bob, you were here too, for that brief, because it was before, actually, before an engineering or zoning meeting, I believe. So yeah, the ability, if we want to formalize that, we could do even a written, step by step, but it should be 3 switches and hit record.
I think it should, all those that you just talked should be on there. And availability to get to it very easily on our website. So, thank you.
Yeah, I agree with that. Maybe we need to make some inquiries with some of these committees to see if they have any reluctance to do it.
We
And
could-
or maybe they just don't know how.
And Brian, maybe that's a future conversation, but I think right now, as it stands, the request for today was just getting those minutes agendas online, that's all.
Okay, so at this point, I don't see any action to move forward, but we'll make some inquiries and see if we can make those minutes more efficient and available. So the next item on the agenda is amending our codified ordinance, section 860.03, fees, and this is for the medical marijuana dispensaries. So we have an applicant coming before the planning commission soon, right, Bob, or?
Yes, the end of the
okay.
month.
In the end of the month. So, part of the regulations, and I don't have them in front of me, I apologize, but I believe the law director can confirm this. Part of the regulations for medical marijuana dispensaries was that cities could not impose specific types of fees, especially if they're based on revenue or like a tax or something like that. So in our ordinance, we do have under fees 3 different sections. A talks about an initial application fee of $350, and then beyond that, a renewal every year is $250. But then 860.08C talks specifically about, if they make more than a certain amount, then they pay a percentage of their earnings and stuff like that, which is clearly in violation of the regulations. So C has to go. I'm not so sure about A and B. I mean, is it unreasonable for us to ask for an application fee? And I'm not sure that the regulations prohibit that. And that's probably more of a question for our law director. But it seems to me unreasonable. I mean, we have a lot of application fees for all kinds of things. Why wouldn't we charge for the administrative work we have to do on behalf of the city? Why wouldn't we charge a fee for that? Or maybe the better question is, why would we do it for free? Thoughts?
Well, on February 14th, Valentine's Day, the law director sent us that email, and he just said in the email, I believe there's a provision in there that reflects a fee on gross revenues like Ravenna's on cultivators, processors, or dispensaries located within Ravenna. I believe that these fees will be contrary to the Ohio law that he's referring to that was passed on September 30th. So any fee, it prohibits any tax or fee based on gross receipts. I think that's the takeaway there. So to your point,
Based on gross receipts.
Yeah, and that's what.
Which is only C.
C, right. It's
Yeah.
1.5% of the gross annual sales above the amount of $1.25 million. Boy, these places are gonna be raking it in, I guess. So my suggestion moving forward, and maybe we'll get some contrary information from the law director by the time we vote on this, assuming this does go forward, would be to leave A and B, which are just the initial fee and then the renewable application fee. And I don't think $350 is a whole lot to ask. I don't know exactly what needs to go into licensing these medical marijuana dispensaries. They're new, so it's probably going to take a little time and investigation initially. But I'd like to just move this forward with the intent of repealing or removing C and leaving A and B in place unless we hear contrary information from the law director. Yes, Cliff.
Rob, did Ken okay theirs at the planning commission last week or week before?
Yeah, I haven't looked into that. I'd be curious. Maybe I'll try to see if we can find that out. That might help us. Okay.
That's the only two in Portage County, as I remember, that have been okay. Us and
Yeah, ours hasn't officially
Well, I
been
mean,
okay.
But those are the only two that are on, even for review so far.
Was Kent approved by the state?
Well, it was approved by the planning commission in Kent. So I
I believe the state approved both of them.
Yeah, I think the state comes
state's
first.
already, the planning was last week, was on the news.
I will check into that. So we're good to move this on then? Okay. Next, moving right along. Let's see. So amending another code of ordinance, section 40407. So this goes along with the four-wheeler discussion and eventual ordinance that we passed. And it was brought to our attention by Mr. Semino that, well, let me just say this, if, one of the things we included in our ordinance was that anybody who is in violation of the four-wheeler, snowmobile, whatever vehicle you want to talk about, code, more than once, any subsequent violation could result in them having their vehicle impounded. And so 40407 lists, and I think it's in our packet, the different circumstances when a vehicle can be impounded. And Mr. Semino suggested adding subsection 11 to address these types of vehicles. He didn't provide any wording, so hopefully he's working on that. Oh, it is?
Yeah, when any vehicle's found to be in violation of section 446.03, subsection D, and that's the 11th reason
okay, it's
for
in.
yeah,
Yeah.
being
All right,
able to
so he's got
impound
it
the
in there.
vehicle.
Yeah, thank you. So this is just moving this forward to getting, kind of tightening up the code of ordinances to make sure we're all in compliance from different sections.
Yes.
Any questions, comments, concerns? Okay, then we will move that forward as well. So next on the agenda, we have a couple of items related to the RAC. One is lighting and annex water heater. So I would, Judy, are you here to address that?
The light fixtures in over the rack are going out with the old ballast, the oil-drip ballast, and so they're not the LEDs that were not part of the Honeywell project, and so they all need replaced. I got 3 different quotes for 3 different ways to replace it, piece and parts it together, or just go ahead and replace them all with LED. And that was the quote that I had given to you guys. And then the second item was the water heater. And that is very expensive.
Hey Judy, do you mind using the microphone just so we could hear a little bit better?
Sorry.
Thanks.
Do you want me to repeat that?
No.
And the second item was the water heater for the annex building. And I believe that water heater is as old as the building. I think it's from 2003. So it's time, it's leaking.
Oh, it
And there is a different, we can either get it with a return pump or without a return pump. But the way in which that the water has to go through the building, it's advised that we get it with a return pump. So, and that quote that I have is without an electrician service. So,
Are there tracking sheets? Can I see them in our packet?
I'm sorry,
Tracking sheets, costs?
they were not in there?
Quotes.
They were
that
not
you
in the
got?
package?
We don't have anything.
No,
Did you get some?
won't see anything.
We don't have anything.
Well, can we get them for next week?
Yeah.
Do you have an approximate cost?
Yes, so the lighting, I think, was around 6,700. Is that right, Brian?
Was that for full replacement?
Yes, for all of the light fixtures. There's 32 of them. And then for the water heater, it's over 10,000 for the water heater.
Okay.
But I will get that to you.
All right.
Judy, is the water heater something that would be a shared cost between the different departments, or is that strictly the rack?
It would be a shared cost.
So this requires an appropriation?
Yes, we'll need to, yeah, well, yes, it will, because, we have plenty of money in the 550 Parks Fund, but, there's no money appropriated. I don't think you have enough small cap for that, do you?
No.
Okay, so probably, yeah.
Okay, so we'll get the tracking sheets, we'll have some definitive numbers, and we'll go ahead and move this forward. All right. So why don't you go ahead and address the next item on the agenda, which says the RAC joining the city complex.
Yep, so this is just a discussion.
Okay.
Just something to consider, highly consider, please. I've just kind of really tossed this around and gone back and forth about it, and knowing the future of utility billing going to be moved over, and that just leaves Bob and I over at the annex building, and the cost of these items are really high. It's just, and my own operational funds are lower, my capital improvement is higher. I feel that we really should look at what I have in capital improvement, and if we were to sell the annex building and the money that we have for the levy coming in, is it feasible to get a bond and then pay that bond back with the capital improvement money that comes in every year? I think this is probably a one-time shot to be able to do something like this for the city. And if you look at other cities, when you have fire and police and city hall and you have a rec center, it just does something for the city. I mean, you just look around and it does something.
So, but it sounds to me like you're assuming for some reason that you would not be included in whatever we build on this new site.
No, I just think it should be I think we should be considered, and there's a lot of benefit to why we should be rather than not be.
Yeah.
And then we could also sell the annex, and then we've got the money to be sold for the annex as well. We are outgrowing the space that we have there. Not necessarily for the evening classes, but the morning classes. We have right now, like on tomorrow or Wednesday, there's a 9 o'clock class in the group exercise room. There's a 9 o'clock class in that little hallway that we put the TRX up that we can only put 6 people in. I'm doing a class down at the tennis courts, at City Hall or at City Park. So we're outgrowing the space, and that building was fantastic, and it was a great idea, but we need to start looking to the future. We don't have a space to do indoor basketball, indoor soccer. We don't have a place for kids' parties and for facility rentals. For you want to rent somebody wants to rent a space for. They want to have a room to rent for something like this. There's no place here that you can just go rent a room. I want to look at Tower Lodge and say, you know what, we spent $10,800 to revamp Tower Lodge. Do you know that we've already made that money back? In 2 years, we've already made that money back. So if our rentals for Tower Lodge can be like that, what can we do for conference rooms? We can make money renting spaces out, but we don't have the space to rent out. So there's more benefit than just we need space to lift weights.
Yeah. I mean, I'd never really envisioned that the rack and what's in that building would not be under consideration.
Okay.
And, the reason we approved the funding of this consultant architect was to make to consider all these things, and I think part of his job is to talk to you and other people at the city to see what the possibilities are. And I know 5 years ago, whenever we talked about that feasibility study, there were certain options, and some of them included leaving the rack alone, and some of them included, a more comprehensive, space that included it. I agree with everything you said. It would be ideal to have everything in one place, and I hope that's a goal of this review by the architects. I think the only challenge is going to be the financial. I mean, what can we do with the realistic money we're going to raise through these bonds? So I don't want you to think, at least from my perspective, that we're leaving you out, because I really don't. That would not be a good idea.
Yeah, I just think there's a lot of benefit to it that,
Sure.
just
And
that
hopefully we'll
would
be able to
encompass a lot.
cost balance what it would be to vacate that space. And it's an older space.
And
You
it
started
goes
by
right
talking
back
about all these
to-
maintenance stuff.
It goes right back to what we've said about this building, the police and fire buildings. You can only put so many Band-Aids on.
Right.
And the cost effectiveness of it is astronomical. And I never, for one, saw anything but you and every other department that's at the annex being a part of the city municipal complex. I envision it as being an all-inclusive one thing. And I really think it could be amazing for the RAC and all of your other services to have it in that one area.
I do too, yeah. I mean, right now we have archery, what are we gonna do? I mean, shoot bows and arrows outside in the wintertime with kids, like, we don't have space. So, yeah, there's a lot of things that we really can consider. And I talked to Bob too about knocking down walls, and like, it's just, we would be chasing our tails, just shoving money out, or like you said, just, yeah.
Cost effectiveness.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I mean, there's no action here. It's going to
Right,
take a while.
Just
What-
discussion, that's what, yeah, just discussion.
Yeah, so, and I appreciate you coming in to talk about all these issues. It's always good to see you, so you're welcome to our meetings anytime. But
We
certainly
appreciate
don't walk away thinking we're leaving you out of this.
I know, not at all, no.
Okay.
I just have never been able to discuss it, so I just wanted the opportunity to. So thank you.
All right.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll just stay right here.
Okay, so the last item on the agenda is joining Monarch City USA. And there's a whole bunch of stuff in our packet related to this, and I have to admit, I really didn't read through. I think it's like a $50 fee for the rest of our lives. And then I guess signs and stuff like that, right? Are you here to talk about that as well?
I can.
Great.
And Chelsea as well, so.
Okay.
So
Tell us about
a couple years ago, I had looked into this, and then I quite honestly just did not have the time to pursue it. But Don Everett has really wanted to take this on, so I said, he takes the lead on it, that's fantastic. But he needs somebody to go ahead and back that. So it's $50 to join it. The mayor would need a proclamation, and the city council would have to, I'd have to put a tracking sheet through. So the city council would have to do that, to approve that proclamation, to declare it Ravenna Monarch City. There is signage that would happen with that. He's talked to Chelsea at great length. Main Street also would be involved with this. So he has some commitments for people, for signs that go for Ravenna's a Monarch City. We've already planted pollinator gardens through some of those grants as it is. There are other grants out there to help support pollinator projects, so I'm willing to do that. Whether we get them or not is another story, but I am willing to do that. I was gonna do it anyway, so that's not a problem. The goal is to try to get not just the city to do it, but also residents to get involved with this project. So basically, it's to help bring back the pollinators, specifically monarch butterflies. And there's a whole project that goes with that. There's a journey north that goes with it can take a whole life of its own.
Well, any reason not to do this?
I like monarch butterflies as much as the next person, so please don't attribute my comments to anti-monarch butterflies.
Take your comments first.
Yeah. You join the program, it is nominal cost, but it's a sign and a lifetime fee. It also commits then to be a member. They ask you to commit to a number of actions, and those actions are reestablishing native milkweed and nectar plants where possible, planting private milkweed and nectar gardens throughout the city, a number of initiatives that I think that are maybe all good things. I just wonder if, on the priority of things that we have to do in the city, if this is something that, all good things, but are these efforts ones that we really want to work toward right now? That's just a thought. I'm all for monarch butterflies, but it's going to be a sign on a pole that says Monarch Village, and whether all these actions take place, somebody's got to do it, and if they, who's going to do it and who's going to be responsible for it, and should it be a prioritization for us as a city? Those are my questions.
Yeah, and the only semi-rebuttal I would say is, I don't know that these are requirements per se. I mean, they ask you to whenever you see those kinds of wordings, you know that there's, I mean, I don't think they have the monarch police coming around every few years checking up on them. And I agree with you, but I mean, we have one person here who said she's committed, and maybe this is something the schools could take on too.
If we believe that strongly in it, can we be committed to it without joining the Monarch Village program too? So that's a question that I have. You know, it's an organization. They approached us about can we join? Please don't take it the wrong way. We can join Save the Whales. We can join Tree City. We can have that. We can have multiple signs in a lot of different places. The question is, do we want to commit to all these other things? If we do, fine. Move forward with it.
Yeah.
I do get your point there.
There's I believe it's on Chestnut and Central. There's a gardening club for, I think it's like the city of Ravenna, I believe. I'm wondering, to your point, if you could reach out to them, just if there's somebody that is kind of, I know that Don is leading the way on this, or Chelsea and you, but maybe there's more information we could pull from them on if you're already doing some of these things, what else is out there that we might be missing? Is there something local that we could be looking at? Face value, I agree that seems pretty simple to approve, and it does say, just to encourage residents to plant some of those things, but maybe that's a question we follow up with with Don and the local
Yeah, and
community.
it is exactly what I agree with you. I agree with you. The only we just can't become a monarch city without a proclamation, and it does.
But do we have to do we
No.
have to have a proclamation to do all these
No,
fantastic
and we are already
things?
doing a lot of those things. We are already doing a lot of those things.
So I hear what
Like
you're
the milkweed, we already have a little milkweed stash off the bike and hike trail that was asked for us from a resident, actually, that noticed that we had some, and so she asked us not to spray that area, and we obliged, and it's flourishing, and we have monarchs here that are flourishing. So there are things that we are already doing that support that.
Moving this forward would involve allocating the money for membership and signs, and somebody writing a proclamation more suited to us as opposed to a city in Oregon. What do you think? I mean, any reason not to just move it on and just see how it goes?
Yeah, I'm okay. It's a proclamation and a $200 commitment. I just wanted to get those comments out about whether it's a real priority for us and do we put our time and energies into it, into this organization. So, no, I'm fine to move it forward.
Okay. We'll move it forward. Maybe we could even get some other organizations, maybe Main Street will latch on to this or something.
Yeah, Don has gotten people to donate the funds, so the $150 wouldn't come to the city. But
Well-
Main Street would help with this project.
Okay, I'm not sure how the money would be handled. They'd have to donate it to the city, and then the city would have to pay. So we need a few ordinances.
Main Street just pay it directly.
Yeah, I don't know how these things work.
We could put the Monarch Village signs on the same post that the Dora signs are going
There
on
you
to.
go.
We could
Save us some posts,
Save
right?
us
You could just add the
posts.
sign, yeah. See, we can come up with some creative ideas.
All kinds of sites.
Thank you. All right, so we've decided to move that on. Is there a management update? All right, so it is 6:41, and I will adjourn the planning committee meeting.
And we're gonna call a quick audible to rearrange some things. Since there might be the possibility of an executive session personnel, we're gonna move to the end of today's committee meetings and then move utilities now to discuss Paul's committee. So Paul, I'll turn it over to you at this point.
Okay, the first thing is amending codified ordinance number 1042. To my understanding, Mr. Finney has something to present pertaining to number 1042 at this present time.
Yes. A few of you may have heard the grumblings about the City of Ravenna's backflow program. So we took a look at, we're looking into that deeper. When we noticed chapter 1042, it basically puts the burden on the water plant supervisor, which is not how the city has operated for many, many years. So we started to rewrite that and uncovered a few other things. So we're gonna meet, 5 or 6 of us are gonna meet tomorrow to further discuss. Goes into our rules and regulations, our backflow program, which is our ordinance, and then how we can possibly manage the backflow. And it also ties it into the utility operator of record, so that it's kind of a little bit of a web that we've got to weave through and make sure everybody's on the same page. So tonight was just going to be a discussion, and we hope to have everything put together for next month's committee meeting.
Mr. Finney, you prefaced your remarks with some of the rumblings about the backflow issues. I'm not familiar with that. Is that something we can briefly review at this time?
So the EPA has requirements for a backflow program, and over the years, employees have either retired or left their positions, and other folks hadn't been directly appointed through their job descriptions to handle these things. So there was a couple other employees that don't serve those positions, brought it to the attention of a few folks that we're not doing what we're supposed to do. There was a violation letter sent from the EPA, but in that letter, it also gave us ways to manage our backflow program in a much more efficient way. And I was out of the office for 3 days last week, and the gal from the EPA is out of the office for a few days this week, so we're playing phone tag too. I want to get their, I'd like to get their commitment, the EPA's commitment that we can do what we're proposing to do to meet the requirements of the backflow program.
Is this
And-
EPA violation something that's finable?
No, not yet. Maybe down the road.
And those suggested changes that you're hoping to finalize would then be going into the codified ordinance 1042?
No, the 1042 currently states the water plant supervisor is responsible for the city's backfill program.
It would change the responsibility.
We're gonna change
sections.
responsibility based on a section, but our
Okay.
rules and regulations will change.
Okay.
The rules and regulations that every water customer has access to, or that if we have a water shut-off, it spells out in our rules and regulations. It's a 40-page document that the city of Ravenna utilizes as their contract, in essence, with the customers. So we have to modify that. And in there, there's a backflow section that states the consumer is responsible to test their backflow periodically. They report that back to the city of Ravenna. So those are some of the changes.
So currently, the
oh, go ahead.
consumer's not responsible?
No, they are responsible, and they are testing their backflows on a regular basis per code.
So then the violation from the EPA
We haven't-
isn't that,
We haven't been notifying the residential side that doesn't have backflows, that they're not allowed to illicitly connect to our water system. It sounds minor, but that's the EPA saying you have to do that. Easy fix, we can put that in our water billing. And then the commercial side, we have to inspect commercial properties to make sure they're not also, they have plumbing, make sure they didn't have plumbing changes and that sort of thing.
So who is responsible to do that?
The
Who's-
city of Ravenna.
The city of,
but
but who within the,
But-
I'm just
Currently,
trying to
the water
understand.
plant operator, the water treatment plant operator is currently responsible based on our ordinance.
So then,
We haven't operated that way, and this
who,
ordinance.
how have we operated? Who was responsible to
Yes.
do it?
There was supervisors, Dragos did it for many years.
I see he's
Obviously,
been
they
gone
haven't
a
been
long
around for a
time.
while.
And
So
who took it
then-
over after Drago?
Good question.
So which means nobody's,
The street department supervisor, Chuck Dowdy, has been certified, Jason's certified, I believe, yeah, they're both certified. We receive information from the consumers, the commercial/industrial consumers do test their backflows. We receive that information, but there's a further step that we're supposed to actually investigate every single building, every single structure. We have almost 800 commercial customers. It's not feasible for us to do that. It's not feasible for us to see through walls, see up into ceilings and things like that.
And that was supposed to be most recently Mr. Dowdy and Mr. Lovejoy to oversee that on the commercial structures.
No, the commercial structures are done by, they have to get their own plumber to do the yearly backflow testing. Those results then are sent to BSI. And then we get those results from them, from BSI.
BSI is our mailing agent, so BSI sends, I'll use the word postcards, sends a postcard to the commercial industrial customer telling them it's time for them to update, to test their backflow meter.
I can honestly say, I built my house in 2005 and have never received anything.
You wouldn't because our residential customers
Yeah,
don't
it's-
have backflows.
It's only
Okay.
done to commercial.
It's only done to commercials,
Mhm.
correct. So to say that the city hasn't been doing it, we have been doing it, but the EPA wants another step further, which we hadn't been. That's where we fell short over the years. We haven't been going into 800 structures and investigating to make sure they're not illicitly connected.
Did they ever advise us before sending a violation that this was something that we needed to be doing?
The backflow testers know this. So the ones who are certified as backflow testers know these requirements.
So that would be Dowdy and Lovejoy.
We have multiple backflow testers in the city.
Okay.
They're just not paid to do that.
Do we have anyone that is paid to do that?
That's what we're gonna iron out with our ordinances.
so when will the water plant superintendent's name be removed and someone else?
The intent is
Someone
to have
else's-
this ready for the month of October.
Okay. So who,
We're
Who-
meeting tomorrow. Bob and I Chuck, Mike Reynolds, and Tim Stevens from the water plant. We're meeting tomorrow. We want to, like, iron all this stuff out, like Bob said, and we're hoping, well, we will have it ready for the October committee meetings.
And some of this is going a little deeper into how the city's gonna function in the future, more so than, you know, the task at hand. How do we want the city, how should the city function? Should this backflow be at the tree, or the street department, or should it be somewhere else in another department? Be it water plant, be it utility billing, that's what we gotta figure out.
So do you have an idea who would be responsible? I mean,
No. Not
okay,
yet. No, we want to have a united front before we move forward. And again, you know, when we review these, we're not looking at the person that's in charge, we're looking at the position of charge.
Sure.
And
no, that's
we
under,
have to get through those personalities also.
Right.
Somebody might not want this duty, but that might be the best
They
place
don't get
to have them.
choose their duties.
Well, you're exactly right. They should not get to choose their tasks. However, if their job, if they were hired to do a certain job and we want to add to their task, that creates another issue, especially if they're in the union. So it's not as easy as it sounds. So that's why we're going to meet tomorrow and further discuss.
so could this have been possibly alleviated in the past?
If somebody wanted to, if it was known, yes.
This goes way back.
Yeah, this is back.
We're not
This was
talking
written
months,
1994.
we're talking years.
No, I understand that. That's why I said it could have been alleviated. When I meant in the past, going back several years whenever it started to happen.
So I have a document from the 90s that basically says we've been okay with what we're doing, but in 2015, EPA changed some things. So Mike Reynolds gave me multiple documents about that thing to review and to try to make sure what we do is what we believe to be the most current standard, which could change next year. We don't know.
No, that's understandable that it
works.
could change down the road.
But more than likely, someone will end up being compensated for for wearing this hat. Because they're not currently compensated. Nobody is compensated to do this.
So just for clarification, the edits that you provided in 1042 in the email, is that what's being presented tomorrow then for discussion?
Yes,
Just
yeah.
adding those, okay.
You're looking at all the red lines?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we're going to discuss tomorrow.
So when you mentioned that those are inspected by BSI, so when you said
No.
it's,
They're not inspected by BSI,
Oh.
they're inspected by
Certified
Plumbers.
backflow.
oh, certified backflow,
Plum, yeah.
okay,
And then those results are sent electronically to BSI,
okay.
and then the city gets a copy
So
when those
who-
are all completed.
When you say the city gets a copy, so who is that?
It goes to the street department currently.
Okay, that's what I was referring to, which I wasn't referring to exactly as a person's name, but a title.
And the water plant's also.
Water plant gets a copy.
Okay, now why is that when the superintendent of water treatment plant isn't affiliated with backflow?
Because our ordinance 1042 specifically states that the water treatment plant operator is of record.
Okay, well, the good thing is you said it's going to be changed real soon.
And no action on this one, right?
No action, no.
Bob, it's a lot, it's different way of thinking as far as, I'm finally grasping the streets and sidewalk stuff. Now we're throwing water treatment stuff, so I'll probably have some questions the next time around, so thank you.
Well, it sounds good that this is going to be changed and corrected, it sounds like very soon.
All right, so the next item, OPWC application. You guys have heard these probably, well, some of us have heard them 22 times, and Another has heard it 33 times, Mr. Bowen. So this is the same OPWC application that we submit year after year. And again, this is for, there's actually 4 different streets. Meridian, South Meridian Street, section of Murray. There's a section of Sycamore and Harris also that's not listed on here. And this is for water line. This would be construction 2024. I'm sorry, 2020. This would be construction 2023.
And then would paving then follow through like in 2024?
Generally, that's what we do. Sometimes we'll give it 2 years to settle if it's in the street.
Are the plans currently complete on those 2 projects? I'm asking in self-interest. I live on Murray, so.
The survey has been done.
The survey was done, yeah.
Plans have not been.
The plans have not been, okay.
And is- 2 separate projects, right? Meridian and Murray.
No, it's one, it will be considered one project.
Okay,
It's just multiple streets.
gotcha. And is that new water line then not, that it, like hydrants and everything that go along with it? Is that what I'm thinking of, or is it, okay?
Yes. So there's a section on Sycamore that the water line will be extended and upsized with hydrants. There's a section on Murray that will be new water line. There's a section on Meridian that will tie the residents to the 8-inch and abandon the 4-inch that's there. There's a bunch of little things. And then, of course, the hydrants will be tied over the 8-inch if they're not already.
Thanks.
Just one small question. I know a lot of times materials in the past year or so have been a lot harder to obtain. Do you know if that's changed for the contractor or not?
Well, hopefully next year it will change.
Okay,
We're still waiting on the water pipe for Page Street and North Scranton Street. So that might not show up until, deep into the winter.
okay. All right, thank you.
What is the percentage of city share on this?
It'd be, so it's a 50/50, 50% grant, 50,000 loan, and the rest is city share.
Thank you.
And just for minutes, you all right to move that on purposes?
That part, yes, for the
OPWC.
water line project,
Mhm.
yes, that part. Yeah, no, that's fine.
And the 1042 is staying on our committee for since this is discussion.
Yes, it needs to. Okay, so 1042 will be here until whenever. And since we do not have a management update, this committee will be finished 6:59.
I'll bring Community and Economic Development Committee to order at 6:59 PM. Fair Housing Agreement. I apologize. I was not aware that this was in the works. I hadn't seen it before the agendas went out. It is a typical housekeeping item in order for the old formulas, community development grant funds, as well as the community housing improvement impact and preservation programs funds. Typically, it is paid out of those grant funds to cover the amount on the fair housing agreement. Just glancing through, I did note that the dates are 2021 programs, which I don't know if it was an oversight when they were updating the contract, or if it's that they ran out of funds and now they're gonna go back to the 2021 grants to utilize those funds, because they are biannual programs. Sometimes the dates can be off, but I would recommend that we check with RPC and make sure that these dates are correct as to what they need to be, and maybe follow up with NDS as well, because this is also part of their programs that they administer. Also, the compensation is $7,000, and if you look further through, it says it won't exceed $7,000, but then it's referenced at $5,000 to come out of the grant program at the certification of the finance director. So I want to make sure that somewhere in this contract, those numbers are reflected correctly before we approve anything.
It does look like whatever was submitted in our packet was cut off.
Yeah, there's,
So there's maybe other information missing.
so,
Is it Todd who sent this over?
probably Lisa's in charge of their CDBG programs, so I would guess that Lisa sent it over, or unless they have a admin person now, I don't know. But like I said, I was never,
Did they just send the one page?
No, the mayor gave that to me.
Oh,
and this is something, Andrew, that I would request that stuff that's gonna be on my committee, that maybe I get CC'd on the original requests, because there's stuff that comes through that I am unaware of, and sometimes don't even know until the last minute.
We can do that. I think, and that's making a request of the, just larger, anybody making a request of the council, just make sure that the chairperson is CC'd or made aware of what's going on.
my guess is in
Yes.
the past, this, like you said, this is housekeeping. I remember Todd Peets coming and talking to the city about this agreement, and I think this is an ongoing thing we usually do.
Well, it's a requirement of the state
Right.
when you have the CDBG home.
No, and I
Housing
agree with
trust
you,
fund
but I
funds.
don't think we've had your expertise on council before, so I don't know that anybody was requesting that up front.
Right, I just would like to see
Yeah.
an accurate contract reflected.
Yeah, absolutely.
Given those two small changes, you're okay with the contract, though, as
Yes,
written?
it's the basic fair
Yeah.
housing contract.
Yes, okay.
Cheryl, just so you're requesting this.
I'm requesting the dates of the
Where it
contract.
says December 1st, 21,
The city will apply for the 2021 Community Housing Impact and Preservation CHIP program. We've already done that. We've been awarded. We received it a long time ago. And then the next paragraph, RPC will implement the City of Ravenna's 2021 Fair Housing Activity and coordinate their efforts with Neighborhood Development Services. I want to verify that this contract is covering the 2021 CHIP. Or do they need to change that to reflect the current year? Because we're at the end of 2022. Then in the above compensation, if you look, it says that the execution of this contract by the City of Ravenna authorizes RPC to proceed December 1st, 2021. Work to be completed by February 29th, 2024. That sounds like a typical CHIP timeframe. But if it was supposed to take place December 1st, 2021, why are we receiving it now? And
I get a
then,
feeling this is just outdated. They just didn't send us the new form, new contract.
and then compensation of $7,000, where it says the work for fees not to exceed. And then the certification on the last page wants you to certify 5,000. So is it 5,000, is it 7,000, and where's the additional 2,000 coming from? Because I know for a fact our fair housing plan is paid for out of our CHIP grant.
So was it
And
just me?
is there any questions,
Oh.
concerns, anything with that?
See, I only got the first page.
No.
Move it forward with those changes. Okay. And Dennis isn't here and the mayor's not here, so I guess no management updates at this time. I will end this meeting.
Can I just ask a question before you adjourn? And somebody else brought this up to me, I don't remember who, but there are reports that Dennis produces. I've seen them from time to time.
It's been a while.
Oh, it's been a while? But just like you made a request, I'd like to make a request that council see those reports when they're produced. I don't know how frequently they are. I've just had other people
Yes.
who've received them forward them to me. And I think they're real informative. I'm not complaining,
No, I agree
I just like to see
completely.
that stuff.
As as I said, being the chair, and there's been stuff that has come across my agenda that I had no clue on, and half the time I find out information in a CIC meeting, which I think is very unfair. I do think that monthly reports from all department heads, are a great thing for us to review. We get them from police, fire, we get them from building, we get them from finance, utilities. I think all departments need to be providing some type of a monthly report to us, including
Go ahead.
our economic development. Now, granted, there are confidential things going on behind the scenes that can't be put out there in the public, but there could be Project ABC or Project XYZ coming to the forefront. I do think that we deserve to have that forefront notice on
Well,
that.
it's just helpful when people ask us questions about stuff. Well, people always ask, what's going on in the city? And it would be nice to have that economic development report just to refer to, or, because like you said, sometimes there are things going on that we don't know about.
There is, and I know that might be kind of a month-to-month thing, but I think, again, I mentioned at the last meeting, but plugging what looks like Dennis was doing on the website, under business, there is what looks like 5 or 6 tabs. And under the quick facts and statistics, there's a general Ravenna economic report that I don't know if it covers the year, but there's a lot of good information that he's put on there, including the commercial real estate, which I think is interesting.
Yeah.
So I would refer to that, especially when we're trying to turn the tide into what the actual facts are about the city of Ravenna and what the perceived facts are about our city. But, yeah, sorry, I'm just piling on.
I agree, that's quite important for all the chair people.
And with that, I'll adjourn at 7:07.
That's me. 7:07, I'll call Information Systems Committee. I'm gonna pass this one off to Brian since he did all the work on it. I'm not gonna pretend like I did this. You were doing this, so.
Okay, so, we had talked about this several times back last year even, about, software awareness training. We did a sample of it, I think, was it 2020 or 2021? It was early
2020.
It's been a bit.
2020, so it's been a while. We did do a sample of this before. I think last time we talked about it, the cost was pretty prohibitive. I mean, it was pretty large. They've come back since then and gave us a much, much cheaper option. And I think it's less than half the price it used to be. I think it's looking like $175 a month, and that pretty much covers citywide, is what they're saying.
Instead of per user.
100 U is a lot more than this last time, so. I guess I just want to see, it doesn't really need to be anything by council to do this, but I kind of want to see where council wants to go with some general direction. We do have some money appropriated. We could put this in for the rest of the year with our appropriations, but is this something we still want to do? I mean, it's not a huge amount of money, but it's still $175 a month. I don't want to just throw it out there if council's like, there's really no interest there, want for this stuff.
Is it something that in the future will help with the cyber insurance?
It could. It's not directly, I don't think there's anything on the questionnaire.
I know when we looked into it before, it was highly recommended to reduce the cyber insurance costs. Now, whether that's still a thing 2 years later or not, but I can't imagine that any type of education can't help.
Well,
I think there's stuff on the questionnaire on it. I don't know exactly how it's worded. It's very difficult for municipalities to get cyber insurance right now. I mean, many of them had to drop it last year because they have been so restrictive. And ever since they had this war in Ukraine and all that, it's really targeted the municipalities. And the
think with the higher risk we're getting now, and the risk is only gonna go up higher in the future. Every time they fix one IT control, something else happens somewhere.
And I believe this is something, I mean, we could do it for a while, if we really do not like it, we don't think it's worth the money. I believe, and I'll double check before we actually do something like this, but I believe the case is that we could cancel it at any time, so I don't think we're stuck in this for any infinite amount of time. I mean, I'll find that out for sure. Maybe there is a 1-year minimum, I'm not sure.
Well, the quote doesn't seem to say.
I don't remember that.
It says, well, I don't know. But the quote's very minimal. My concerns about this have been the quality of the so-called training.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, it doesn't say what it is. Are these videos, and then the phishing testing. So, but, and I'm okay with that, and this is a much more agreeable price. But again, you get what you pay for, so maybe it's less because there's less involved in the training. But the other component that I brought up last time, and I don't know if the administration had done any investigation into this, but what's the follow-up? I mean, we kind of need some controls internally to say, okay, somebody gets caught in one of these phishing things, right? And there's different levels. So they send out one of these things where click here to verify your retirement status, and then you go to a form and fill out all this information about yourself and you click submit. Well, that's really bad, right? Because now potentially some company has all that information. But is there a requirement for that employee to follow through with the training? And we talked a little bit about it, and I'm not sure where it ever went, and it may not have gone anywhere. But I guess the point I'm making is if we're gonna have this in place, we need some teeth. Because if the whole point is to prevent exposure either to the employee and their personal data or the city and its personal data, then, there should be some guardrails and also follow-up. And we come up to this part, but we don't go much further. So I wonder if we're vesting in something that's not gonna really have any real bang for the buck if people don't participate. That's the other thing. Do we require whatever training here to say every employee has to spend X amount of time with whatever this training package is? So those are my concerns. My major concern with this proposal is I don't know what it is. It just says training and phishing testing.
We went over briefly. I think if you were to have Quality IP come in, we have the ability for them to set up. You can walk through the process, but I think when they send out those phishing emails, then they've got you marked. You click on the link, then they follow up. If it's the same thing with a training. But I think the question the last time around was really, is it going to be a requirement for the 150 or 200 users that this allows to go through and be opted into the program? For me, it's no question. Yes, we should be doing it. Absolutely. When everything from the fire department, police department, everything here is all data that is all online, and as we move to a more cloud-based world, then our employees now have the ability to work from home, and there's all those things that are tied up in this. And
Quality IP, I know, had shared with us some examples of policy that have been shared.
We did ask them for that, and they did provide
Yeah.
it to us. And then we did talk to Heather about maybe putting it in the personnel manual, so when people were hired, they put that in there.
Well, but you brought up an interesting question, because our police and fire are controlled by a couple of unions, or a few unions. Is that something that needs to be negotiated as part of their contract,
I don't know.
Union employees, I believe, still sign the personnel manual and everything like that, so I believe it'd still be in there. How much teeth would it have? I don't know. I mean, are they really gonna push it to that level? I mean.
And certainly the policies that they sent, because I looked at it, it wasn't like if you clicked on this phishing scam, you had disciplinary action. It's more just of that educational piece.
But you're required to follow up with.
But you're required to do it in the educational piece behind it.
Right, yeah.
And you could always add more teeth to it if you wanted to in the future, if you really wanted to. But I think you're right, it was more generic. You had to do a training video and you had to log your time into that.
And I know, I'm sure you probably do those at Kent State, correct? Do you do? See, we do. We have to, and I don't even notice that they're doing it most of the time. I mean, I get the.
The training?
The training, like, or the phishing scams, like,
No, we
it's
get the
happening,
phishing
and that's
stuff,
running.
but not the,
But the training I have to do, like where I'm at, it's once a quarter and it's 3 minutes or 4 minutes and it's an informational something. So, you know, it just depends on, Quality IP, I'm sure would have no problem sharing what that looks like.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's one, it was a monthly phishing they would be sending out. I did remember them telling me that. And I think within this quote, I think there is a PDF document, but I don't know if you guys all got that. But you probably, is this all you guys got?
Yeah.
Okay. But within the quote itself, you can access the PDF document. It does have some information in there, so I'll definitely
Okay.
give that to you guys.
well, I'm good with moving it forward, but I would like to see some,
More
what's in that PDF. I don't know if Quality IP has to be here to answer questions, but I would like to know more than what's listed on this invoice.
Yeah, absolutely. I can ask them to provide some information. Would you guys want them to come out and talk about it too?
We
Could
can,
they,
yeah, remote.
we could remote them in.
Make them work a little bit for us?
Yeah.
Well, we could bring them in remote if they're, you know,
Oh, that's
at their
true, yeah.
office, then we can do
Yeah.
something there, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and I don't know if necessarily an ordinance with this, but it would be nice to get these little questions ironed
Yeah,
out and then
for sure.
we can move forward then. Okay.
Well, we
Yeah.
need an ordinance to approve.
The appropriation.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have enough appropriations within the IT budget right now, but the
It's-
contract
it's a
itself,
contract.
right? Okay. So we would need an ordinance then.
So are you gonna follow up with them to
Yeah, I'll
see if
follow
they
up
can
with
join
Nick
us
and
at the?
Sandra and-
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, because they really want us to go forward with this anyway, so I'm sure they'd be much more than willing to answer any questions or come out.
Good, because I believe that's critical.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, it's been a while. Okay.
So are we good to move it forward then? Okay.
I'm fine with that.
All right, that was the fastest meeting we had.
All right.
I'll end the information systems meeting.
All right.
7:17, yeah, okay, thank you.
7:17, I'll call the Public Health and Safety Committee meeting to order for Ms. Michaels. 3 items on the agenda this evening. First item is a body camera grant. This grant has been applied for. It's, all the details are on the second page there, the amount of cameras, the warranty, the amount of the grant. It's 100% funded. There's no match with the city. And this ordinance will be just to allow authorization if the grant is awarded. It has not been awarded at this time. They're looking for possible award later in the year. But if it is, this will allow them to move forward with the purchase at that time. The additional cameras will also be able to outfit the entire police department. Will, at that point, have the ability to have every officer have a camera at that point.
And what is it currently on who wears the body camera?
Currently, there's 16 cameras within the department. How they're distributed,
So every officer that works wears a body camera. So our school resource officer, when our detectives go out on the road, they're wearing a body camera. When myself or the captain go out, we wear body cameras.
And then the additional 15 that the grant is proposing are going to be extras, or you're just going to have to stop passing them around from one person to the other?
Right, we would stop passing around.
Okay.
That would buy extra equipment. With the addition of those cameras comes the chargers and the extra clouds.
Okay. And everybody'd have their own then? Okay.
Just want to make a quick comment. According to that, I believe that those purchases would be quite critical and very important to the department.
I agree.
so hopefully that goes through. So if there's no other questions, we'll go ahead and move that forward. Next item on the agenda is the fire department service maintenance agreement. This is a maintenance contract with Stryker for the heart monitors and AEDs that they use. And I actually will turn this over to Acting Chief Chappell to explain the rest of this request.
So we had a 3-year agreement with Stryker that just came to expiration a few months ago. The cost of the contract that we had was only a 3-year deal. It was $12,000. Since the signing of the initial contract in 2019, the cost of this contract has jumped right now from roughly $4,000 a year to about $6,200 a year. They're proposing another increase of at least 15% going into October, and then another 15 to 20% going into February, March of next year. So the way that they broke this down, they gave me different amortizations of what I thought, of what we thought to get collectively would be the best contract that we can sign to, would be a 5-year agreement, and it comes in just under $32,000 a year, which is roughly $6,000 a year annual installments that we would have to pay. With that contract, it calibrates all of our heart monitors, services, all the data that is required through the monitor that when we electronically file all of our EMS reports to the hospital and whatnot. Provides all the coverage for the batteries. They're about $400 a piece. So basically it's a head-to-toe warranty on the monitor. If the monitor is non-serviceable, it breaks, they'll replace it at 100% with no cost to us.
I have a question I just thought of. How often do those get calibrated, or is it a time span, or
Yes.
how often they're used? Okay.
Minimal once a year, but the contract allows us biannually. So every 6 months.
And how many
Thank you.
heart monitors are we talking about? The total number of heart monitors, total number of AEDs also?
So we have 2 heart monitors, 1 AED, but we're also getting another heart monitor that is donated to us through Portage Medical. So we'll actually have 3, and that will be covered under this agreement as well.
Do we, I know it's probably not close, but the cost of purchasing a monitor versus $6,000 a year for the
So it's
maintenance of it, what's the difference there?
So cost of a monitor, just the basic cost, roughly $40,000,
Okay.
$40,000 to $45,000.
Yeah,
So this is a given.
So if we have 3 monitors, you're
Yeah,
looking
the
at
monitors are the
$20,000.
expensive one, the AED is much, much less than that.
Correct.
Yeah,
The monitor itself is a lot more sophisticated.
Yeah, okay, so it's,
It
okay.
does capnography, it has a blood pressure machine built into it. It's a pretty sophisticated piece of equipment.
So is this the company you typically buy the heart
Correct.
monitors from?
So Physio is owned by Stryker, and they're the only game in town. So it's a one and done. You can't shop the price. It's either their contract or agreement or nobody's.
Out of curiosity, is that third one gonna go on the new engine then?
So if we get a new monitor from PMC, it's been on order for about 5 months, just like everything else. It's backdated. So the new monitor would go on squad, and one of the older monitors would go on the engine, correct? So basically until we figure out what we want to do, if we want to run a 3rd squad, the purchase of our new squad, we'll make our engine an ALS engine. So when both squads are out, we can still respond, other than transporting, we can respond to another EMS call, provide 100% services other than transport until mutual aid came, to arrive without any hiccups.
So yeah, life-saving equipment, very, very important to keep it keeping it working properly, so. Are there any other questions? Okay, we'll go ahead and move that forward as well. Next item on the agenda, back to the trash cans placement here. So, a little more trash talking tonight. So everybody received some suggestions of sample ordinances from other communities. If you've had a chance to look at them. The one that kind of jumped out to me was example B. it doesn't seem to add any kind of cost to a resident, like putting a gate or a fence up, anything like that. It does have a couple specific instructions as far as time it needs to be put away and in a inconspicuous place, which is, I think, what we're kind of going for with this. I think that's the direction Amy was heading. So they're not sitting in the front yard, and that they're put away to not sitting out for days on end. And I know people have concerns about enforcement of this, but normally something like this will be enforced, I think, when the neighbors have had enough and the trash cans have been sitting out for weeks with trash, overflowing. And I think that's when they'll call and it would be addressed at that time. I think that's probably the only way we would be able to enforce this, is if we were notified that there was an issue. So,
It's tough because we have how many different trash holders.
yeah, exactly. To know the date and time, but if the neighbors notice it out for, 2, 3, 4 days, they may make a complaint at that point. I don't know how else to enforce it.
What was the you're saying there was one option that's being recommended?
No, that's the one that looked the most appealing.
Which one was
To
it?
me, option B, trash, garbage, and recyclables, and the containers designed for such garbage and recyclables must be removed from the curb and placed in an inconspicuous place by 10 p.m. on the designated day of pickup. So it gives them a time frame to remove it from the curb, and it asks that it be put in an inconspicuous place.
Well, I mean, our current ordinance does have a time frame. It also, as we reviewed it, has equally, what's the right word? Nebulous, unspecific language, like what's an inconspicuous place? Is that subject to interpretation?
Yes.
Ours are like as further away as possible from the neighbor. So I think we're in the same ballpark when we choose language like this. The other thing I'll note in this one is it talks about garbage and recyclables, and yet we have a separate contract for recyclables, and that contract has a provision, and I think I mentioned this at a prior meeting. I don't have it in front of me, but basically for people who are a little bit incapacitated, the county will, with an arrangement with that resident, move their cans and then, dump the recyclables. But they have to be within a certain number of feet from the curb, which would be in contrast with this. To me, this is just, I don't know. I'm getting overwhelmed with trying to figure out what the right thing to do is, and I don't know if there is a right pathway for this, to be honest
But with the
with
current
you.
language that we have, a resident could now call and complain,
Yeah.
and something could be done, correct?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So with that, with the enforcement side, this is unaffiliated with this request, but if I could add another agenda item, if the committee's all right, which is going back to the schedule of pickups. I know having a brief conversation with property maintenance that might help on the enforcement side, and if that's the issue, then maybe Kay, I'm kind of looking at you now, maybe we have that discussion again on the schedule for each ward moving forward.
Yeah, I think, the only problem I see with that, and I don't disagree with the premise. It also, will provide some regularity too. But the trash companies, I mean, I don't know that they're gonna be too agreeable to coming out. If they're regularly coming out to the entire city one day a week.
Well, you know what I'm
Coming
gonna say,
in-
we're asking the residents to elevate, the expectation. Why are we not requiring the same thing of the trash companies that are picking up the trash?
Yeah, because I don't disagree. I'm just saying there might be a pushback from them because they'll have added costs.
Yeah. I think it's worth a conversation, though.
Yeah, I don't know what the result would be. I mean, look, we're incrementally heading towards a certain direction, which I like, right? So I'll put it that way. But I don't know if we'll ever get to that discussion. But I don't, like I said, I don't disagree with the idea of it. I just don't know how easy it might be. And you know, we've got pushback from companies before, and it hasn't always turned out too well. But so that's fine. I would like to continue that discussion as well. I don't know what to say about this. We seem to be all over the map every time we talk about it. And I've reviewed some of these suggested codes from other cities, and I didn't find any of them any superior to the ones the one we already have, to be honest with you.
I agree.
I agree.
All right, that being said, we're not in a place to move anything forward or make any determination on this, so.
Well, there's nothing on the I mean, there's
Right,
options.
just a discussion
Okay.
to see if any of these examples, sparked any interest of maybe adding, changing the ordinance, those types of things. There doesn't seem to be a consensus or a want at this time, so it looks like the next discussion will have to be with the carriers to see if we can come to some type of agreement with them. So I will relay that information back to Ms. Michaels, and I'm sure we'll be seeing it in committee again in the near future. That being said, I will have a management update. Did that cover your extra
Yeah,
add-on
and
the discussion with the haulers?
yeah, I'm coming more from the enforcement side. If you're trying to enforce citywide, in my mind, and talking to Don briefly probably a couple months ago now, when you're trying to enforce something like that, it would be a lot easier if it was scheduled out by ward, so that you could focus on Tuesday, Thursday on this section, whatever. So that's where I'm coming from.
Okay.
It's probably not going to be real easy because of what had happened in the past, what you mentioned.
We're not talking about a contract, we're just talking about
No, not
changing
a
the
contract,
schedule.
but
And this
yeah.
is no different than any other city, so,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, we'll save that for another day. At 7:33, I will adjourn the Public Health and Safety Committee meeting. At 7:33, I will call the Streets and Sidewalks Committee meeting to order. Two items on the agenda this evening. The first one is the 2022 street tree planting that the Shade Tree Commission's been working on. Ms. Dubinsky has all the details on that, so I'll let her explain.
Okay, so where we stand is, in the past, with the street tree planting, we just went ahead and sent RFPs out, and then we got them back, and we looked at them, like finance, the mayor and I, and then we went ahead and awarded it to the lowest one, which was always within the budgeted amount. Each year, there's $15,000 that's appropriated in the budget for street tree plantings. So with that in mind, when the discussion started with the law director, indicating that any agreement / contracts needed to come before city council for their approval, that's when the mayor and I start having a discussion. It's like, well, we hadn't been doing it that way just because we were under the impression that since this money was already appropriated in the budget, and the budget was passed by city council, we thought, we were doing it the correct way. But like I said, since these discussions have come up, we took another look at it. So that's why it's here tonight. Did all of you get the email from the law director today?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So that, so this is, from his email, this is how we would like to move forward in the future for this. I think it would streamline things a lot easier. You know, then that way we're not bringing everything to council. In here, he mentions appropriation ordinance, but I think it'd be more appropriation in the budget. So with that being said, I think this is how we would like to go forward with these things that are done every year. The second one is the salt contracts. I don't know if if all of you are familiar with the salt consortium program that the city goes under. This was started probably back during the Beek administration. It wasn't, I looked back and there's no ordinance where it was brought to council to do this. Kelly, when she was the service director at the time, what she did was they just made up these agreements and they were sent out to different entities. And in that agreement, it listed the salt price for the current year. Those entities that wanted to participate with the city, they would notify us. We would send them the agreement, they would sign it and send it back. So with those, there's no, after the initial appropriation for the salt for the year, which is estimated by the street superintendent, there's no additional cost to the city. The entities that want to participate, because they can get the bulk rate, which is to their advantage. So then how that works is there's a scale down at the street department. So when these different entities come down and get the salt, it's recorded, and then in April, invoices are sent out to all those entities, and then that's when we receive payment for them.
So they come in, they weigh empty, they load the salt, they weigh out, they get a ticket with the weight, those tickets are turned in, it's added up all year. In April, they pay their salt bill at the cost that that we.
And this year, it's $48.69 a ton, and it's going to be supplied by Morton Salt. Just to backtrack here, so how the price has come about is the state solicits bids from, there's only two suppliers, Cargill and Morton. And they get the best price, then they award the bid to the lowest bidder. Then the city receives an email from ODOT stating when they will begin accepting electronic forms and resolutions for the ODOT winter supply contract through ODOT's website. All orders are based on the electronically submitted tonnages submitted from the salt resolution/ordinance participation form on ODOT's website. So, so that's how we judge it by, you know. If we don't want to do that, then we're on our own to go find salt at a different price, but it'll be way higher. This year, the salt appropriation is $196,000.
What's the average that we receive back on these contracts?
It just depends how much is used. It could vary from year to year.
Right, obviously, but is there an average amount that we typically?
I don't have that.
I mean, last year, it looks like we got 41,000 and some change total.
Not bad.
That's what it shows last year.
I don't really understand the salt thing, and especially since we're selling it. But I do have concerns about the idea that just because money is appropriated, it can be spent or signed a contract without council action. I mean, there's any number of things we appropriate money for, but we still have to approve contracts. For example, how much is the tree planting contract?
15,000 is appropriated.
Is that how much the contract says they want? I mean,
No, I mean, 15,000 is appropriated. Last year, we only spent 12,000. So it just depends how the prices come in.
right,
So 15 for match.
for a year. We have a contract for somebody for a year.
We only do one planting, we only have one tree planting project a year.
And we try to do around 20 trees,
Last year, we did like 34.
because we had it real good.
Well, and to me, it doesn't sound that unreasonable. Fundamentally though, I don't know if we're opening up a door by just giving blanket approval for the mayor to sign contracts when it's our role to authorize him to sign contracts. I don't know how other people feel about it, and I guess we could make some exceptions, but I think we need to specifically, identify those exceptions and put some fences around what those exceptions can be.
I agree.
And I think that needs to be done because after talking to finance at one time, it's like, they're asked all the time, well, do I need to take this to council? Do I need to take that to council? It's like, there has to be something in writing that says, this is what you do.
Well, it
Because
kind of
there's so
is,
many-
remember we talked about, I can't remember the number of the ordinance, it talks about a 2,000. And we never, it's approach avoidance, nobody knows exactly what to do, so we don't do anything.
Right.
And that may be a separate issue, but this is a little bit more defined, where the excuse or the end around bringing a contract to council is to say that the money's appropriated. And I think fundamentally that's a misconception. I don't think one precludes the other. But I do think we might be able to carve out some specific exceptions. But only in those exceptions should those contracts be authorized.
I think that's kind of, sort of what he was saying, because I was kind of reading through Mr. Semino's,
Right.
writing too, and I just saw it today as well, so, I know as much as you guys do, but, I think carving out some of the real routine housekeeping type every year, saying tree planting, some of those real basic ones like this. And then some, obviously the bigger ones and the ones that are different, we would put in there. So we carve out just certain exceptions, like Chelsea could probably go through the ordinances, every year and say, okay, every year we have da-da-da-da-da-da.
Well, when the budget's planned, and because he's talking about the appropriation ordinance,
Yeah,
which
you
we,
put that in the appropriation ordinance.
Yeah.
Only for those specific things.
yes.
Yeah, I think,
Yeah, I don't disagree with
Because it could,
with that
like,
approach.
it could be interpreted too, in discussions, it's like, it's kind of a redundancy, like council appropriate $15,000 to do tree planting, but then we're coming back and asking you, can we do it?
Well, but look, we go out to bids all the time, and then you have to come back to authorize the contract. I mean, we do that kind of thing all the time. And I think the safeguard there, and I hope nobody takes this the wrong way, but it's one thing to say, set aside the money. It's another thing to actually find somebody to pay, because if it's the mayor's uncle, that could be a conflict of interest or something like that. And I'm using a gross example, but I mean, I think that's part of the process. We allocate the money, but then we want to make sure the money's being spent wisely, because who knows, maybe we allocate 15,000 and it can actually be done for a lot less. Or you need more than that, so I mean, that's just the way we have done business, and I think that's the way the city's set up. But I do believe that the law director's carve out here kind of makes sense to me, depending upon what those specific exceptions are.
and that's negotiable, I mean, we could always say, well, no, we don't want to do that, we could do this.
Right,
and that, yeah.
exactly. But what's the status of these two things right now? Are there contracts coming before council, or are we going to reopen the appropriations ordinance? Because
Well, they're already appropriated.
Well,
fine.
but I mean, are there
So-
gonna be a couple of contracts coming to the city for us to approve?
So for the trees, yeah, this is a request for proposal, so we'll receive them back. I guess at that point, we could bring them back to council.
Okay.
And same with the salt. She'd already
And
explained there's two.
Julie's already received a couple
Okay.
agreements back for the salt, so.
So yeah, since they're here now, we will be bringing the information back, yes, before the contracts are.
So there's no council action on this?
Just move it forward.
What, we moving forward?
For the request for proposal?
Will they be in front of us in time for committee of the whole or the regular council meeting then?
The plan was to send out the RFPs for the tree planting on September 26th.
Wow.
Maybe we need a special for that and the design review consultant.
That's
Yeah,
that's close.
Well, do we need an ordinance for the approval, send out the RFPs, or do we need an ordinance for the approval of the ultimate?
When they come back, when we decide on the
Once they
contract.
It's not a contract, that's what we need to do.
Yes, I need to know what you need from me.
We can move the tree planting forward because we're just requesting proposals.
well, you just said you're doing it for both, right? For salt as well, you're sending out an RFP, or you've already
It's already
received?
done.
No, with
No,
the
that's
salt,
done.
there's no RFPs.
No, because the.
Okay.
It's
I'm
signing
sorry.
contracts for them to buy the salt from us.
Gotcha.
It's,
Oh, okay.
it's listed as an agreement. you
We
know.
already, yeah, this is separate than us purchasing salt. This is a contract with these different entities that are listed to use the salt that we have on site.
So I think there's no question moving it forward, it's just the process at this point. So I think we're already on track to have a special. It's I guess the question for Semino, or our law director at this point, whether we need to hedge that with an approval by council to approve the RFP. So that would be, I guess, a question for him. Regardless, I think, no,
I'm in
no-
opinion to move it forward.
What's that?
I'm in opinion to move it forward and just iron out the details.
Correct.
And when will this be discussed again?
Probably next week.
Yeah,
And-
be
and
next,
I'm not here next week.
well,
Um,
this should have been done a while ago.
You're in tomorrow. Is Semino in this week? The law director in this week?
Yeah,
Sorry,
he
I
was
keep
in
referring
today.
to him as that. Is the law director in? Well, then I'll follow up with you tomorrow. Maybe we can just figure out a timeline with him. And we already have the details, and it sounds like Matt can speak on this pretty fluently on that. If it is just the process at this point of council approving, then that's the determination we need to get from the law director. Nobody's gonna argue about do we or don't we need salt.
It's just
Or-
the process.
Yes, exactly. So I think we can talk about that tomorrow, and then I will communicate with council on if this will be on the special.
And if we need a special next Monday, we'll work through it, okay?
Yeah, we can discuss it then to make sure it's gone through that channel before going to the special meeting. Is that all right?
Yeah, works for me.
Yeah, it'll have to be.
Everybody else okay with that?
I'm good.
Andrew, are you gonna contact me tomorrow then?
Yep.
Okay,
Okay.
that being decided, it is 7:49. I will adjourn the Streets and Sidewalks Committee.
At 7:50, a call to order the Personnel Committee meeting. First item on our agenda is compensation of elected officials. Just a couple comments regarding compensation for elected officials. It's a responsibility of City Council to set the salary for City Council and other elected city officials. This is called out in our charter, that it's a responsibility for the City Council to do this. Recently, we've undergone a review of these salaries, And the review was prompted by a couple different things, multiple different things. One was that the salary for city council positions had dropped below the minimum salary to establish 1 year of service under PERS. That was brought to our attention. We also recently had the Charter Review Committee that, as they were doing their work, one of the areas they addressed was how often it calls out that we should review salaries of elected officials. And another item related to that is that any change in these elected officials' salaries have to be established at least 30 days prior to the filing deadline of the nominating positions for the primary election for the terms beginning in the next succeeding year. So that was a timeline that we were under, okay? Just a note, when salaries are changed, they never go into effect for current office holders. It always takes effect upon the election of the person into the office the next time. As we look at our positions, salary changes would go into effect in 2024 for the council president, Ward 3 councilperson, Ward 4 councilperson, and the at-large seat that currently Mrs. West holds. In 2026, the positions of at-large Michaels and Woods and Ward 1 and Ward 2. Those are in 2026. I'm sorry to give you all this information. I think you know it. I just wanted to review it with you.
Do you, can I interject real quick?
Yes.
Do you mind talking about or adding when the current council salary was set? Or do you already have that in your notes?
I do not have that exact date.
All right, move ahead.
Okay, yeah, I do not have that exact date. On one of the,
it's been a long time is my point.
yeah,
That's,
right.
That's the,
It appears, I don't have the document right in front of me, but at one time, the council members were actually on different salary amounts. Then they coalesced to the same amount, and I believe it was back around 2011. No,
Later than that.
it was later than that.
It happened to me. I was brought in at a certain salary.
Okay, yeah. I'm sorry, I do not have it with me here. I do know that the mayor's salary last time it was adjusted was in 2011, and the law director's was in 2007, so a number of years ago. So given those things, and the review has been taking place with the Personnel Committee for a couple months now, during the review, we did look at several items, including how long since the salary had been adjusted, salaries of nearby cities, the responsibilities of the jobs, and the salaries of similar-sized cities. At the end of this review, the recommendations that are coming from the Personnel Committee are that the law director's salary be established at $64,783, which is the current salary of the law director. The mayor's salary, $73,000, and that $73,000 is the salary for the mayor, does not include the $12,000 that is his payment for being the safety director. That mayor's salary increase is about $6,275. The city council salary recommendation is $9,450, and that's up from their current salary, which is $8,148. And the city council president, the recommendation is $9,950, which is up from the current amount of $8,474. Okay. So this is not a procedure that other governmental entities have not been going through also. I did want to say that Kent City Council just recently has reestablished their salaries for City Council, and it is now $10,500 there. City Council in Aurora established their salary at $12,095. So it's not an unusual thing. Members of our committee, do we have questions, comments, considerations we want to discuss right now?
Andrew, to answer your question, looks like November 6th, 2012.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry, I apologize for putting you on the spot.
No,
with
that's
that.
okay, 2012.
Well, can I say, I appreciate, and you alluded to it with the Charter Commission, starting the process and you taking it over, so I appreciate everything you put into this, because it's been a long process, it's not an easy one. And then also, Brian, thanks for the recommendations from the surrounding cities that you were speaking to, so I just want to highlight the work you put into this, and I appreciate it.
Although our committee members are Matt and Christina, was there any other comments?
I think a lot of work was put into this, and I'm okay with moving it.
Okay, with that, we will move that forward to Committee of the Whole next week, and we'll proceed. An ordinance will have to be drawn up related to this with the dates and amounts and times on that. Okay, the next item that we have is the proposal to reestablish the Water Distribution Department. This has been an item that we've talked about for the last 2 months now, and we received a number of documents with information related to this proposed increase. At our last month's meeting, the mayor asked us to get any questions that we had about it ready for tonight, for us to address it, because the request of the administration is to move this forward. And with that, I'll turn it over to Kay for a quick review on these items.
Okay, I think at this point, as Dr. Calvi just stated, we've been discussing this in quite length. I assume everyone received the finance director's email of August 25th outlining the potential cost of adding the 2 water distribution positions back to the payroll ordinance. So I don't think there's anything else at this point that can be added to any of this. So at this point, I think it's just, council's approval or not on this subject.
Do we have any questions? Okay.
Well, with the recommendation of amending 1042 that came upon us tonight under utilities, in the proposed amendments so far, it specifically has utility operator listed, which is also underneath the water distribution department on here. I think we kind of need to iron out all the details, maybe after they have their meeting tomorrow, to determine whether to, or how to move forward with this. I'm not against a water distribution, because obviously we have an EPA violation. I think that we probably need to get this moving and get something done. But I want to have all the information and everything gathered together.
I believe the current job descriptions of the additional people that we were adding include their responsibilities in the way of licenses to address those issues. So it is things that are in there right now. Is that correct, Kay? Yes.
Say so.
Except it doesn't have the utility operators on here. It has the master tech, and it has the, just the overall water distribution, or meter tech, I'm sorry. It does not have utility operators job description in here. And that's the one that's being added to
Yeah.
1042.
Utility operator is already in the
Is already
payroll
in there.
ordinance.
Do we currently have that position
Yep.
filled?
No, we do not. It's being worked on.
Okay, so we're only adding 2 positions with this, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
the other utility operator position is in the payroll ordinance and is an established position.
Okay, it's an established position, but I take it you're looking to hire that person
Yeah,
at the
we've
present.
mentioned that several times, that
Well,
we're in
I'm
the
just-
process of looking for someone.
Okay, well, I didn't know if you're still looking or if there's someone that's
No, we're-
being, uh,
It's really
interviewed.
tough these days finding, I mean, number one, getting resumes, and then, 2 is finding someone with all the qualifications, because this is a very important position.
so are you still considering eliminating someone from the meter department?
We're not discussing that tonight because if and when we do that, it will be done administratively.
My concern was that, what you just last mentioned, and it would require council action to eliminate the position. Because
No,
it's in,
because-
it's in the it is in the personnel ordinance.
No, because the ordinance reads not more than 2 meter techs, so we're still within the ordinance.
Right, and we wouldn't change, I'm saying,
We're still within the ordinance, even if we would eliminate 1
you
meter
can,
tech.
you can eliminate a person, but the ordinance,
The position itself
yeah,
is
the
still
the
there.
request was to eliminate the position.
But it's going to be kept in there as an unbudgeted position, so
That's
down the road,
fine.
if we want to bring, another meter tech back, we can do that.
I did not find the argument of offsetting the cost of the 2 new positions by eliminating the other position as a compelling one, and in fact, I'm not even sure it was presented. But it is an administrative decision if you do not want to fill both of those positions. That's my point on this. So my feeling at this point is I'm okay with establishing the water distribution department for creating the 2 new positions, but that's all I'm willing to do. But it sounds to me like you're not even putting the elimination of the position on the table.
No.
Okay. So I'm not on the committee, but ultimately I would support that to that extent.
The adjustment of these positions and the way in which we do our work is management right, I believe. And I do look toward the administration in this regard on that they can manage the workforce, determine the work that needs to be done, and in the most appropriate way do it. So I agree that this elimination of the other position should be decoupled from this. And with that decoupling, it can be handled in the way in which they deem appropriate. And so the offset, as you consider it right now, don't even consider that offset, is that will the establishment of these positions provide the workforce to be able to improve the operation of the water department and the emergencies that we have to handle all those times, and a lot of our testing requirements. And so I do give my support to that, and with that, members of the Personnel Committee, do you feel that we're okay to move this forward?
With the creation of the 2 new positions, yes.
Yes. Okay, that's what it is, creation. Christina?
Only with the creation of the 2 new positions, yes.
Okay.
I'll save my questions then. Could you just bring us full circle, because I feel like the waters have been muddied since the beginning on this, that what is the need, just to close this out, so that when we come to next Monday's meeting, the need for these 2 positions, and the need for reestablishing the water distribution, yeah.
Well, for many years, there was a distribution department, and then it was eliminated by, you know, a couple past administrations. But it's a very important department within the city. You know, they're dealing with our, you know, in essence with the drinking water and that, and too, and like with all these discussions and with my discussions with the EPA, Olivia from the EPA, she even said, right in her email, that it's highly recommended that we get these certified, licensed people within the department sooner than later.
So their certification, would that be in backflow or distribution or both?
They'd have to have both.
Okay.
They'd have to have a backflow and a distribution license. They would just need a Class 1 distribution license.
Thanks, Mr. Coffey.
And why, like you said, it's been several years, so why was it waited quite a while to reestablish this?
It's just, it never was addressed previously.
That's weird.
One thing that's very informational is the water distribution job duties list. And as you've reviewed those, I'm sure that you've seen that a number of those jobs were being handled by street department employees and being pulled off streets to do a number of those things. And with this, it will be a better use of the workforce in the way in which we address a number of these items. So with that, we will move this forward to Committee of the Whole for next week. Okay? The next item that we have on is building inspector and special inspections by the building inspector. This one came recently to us from Mr. Finney. And Mr. Finney, if you could give us an update on this proposal.
Currently, our payroll ordinance lists how much we pay our building inspectors and in general the department and how our salaries are split up. With the large construction project, the LG Chem project, our building inspector, who's also our plumbing inspector, is concerned that things are being missed because he's not able to be on site as much as he would like. So in our discussion, we agreed to pay him $75 a day to be on site and coordinate with the contractor to keep the project moving. But we don't have a way to pay him directly for $75 for that day. We can pay him $30 per inspection, but not for the day. So I wanted to add a section, number 14 to the payroll ordinance. Section 3, Service Department. 14, Building Inspector Special Assignment, $75 per day. Obviously, when this job gets to a point where he is not needed to coordinate on a daily basis, then we will not pay him $75 a day. We'll just pay him for his specific inspections. That is anticipated when the building is under roof, his inspections will slow down. But currently, to keep them moving continuously, they were gonna hold off on the other building. Now they're moving forward with the building for whatever reason. They're hoping to have the shell of the big building delivered in the next month or two. So we're not adding an employee. We're just asking to compensate him differently, along with the way we're currently compensating.
So on these times that he does an inspection, is it on a non-work day for him that he's doing it? And so it's not in effect being paid twice for the same work.
He is not gonna get paid twice for the same work.
Yeah, so it's a separate day that he's making this.
So the way the inspectors are currently compensated, they get paid per inspection.
30 per inspection, right?
$30 per inspection. That inspection could take 10 minutes, that
Yeah.
inspection could take an hour. It's $30. But there are times when he'll coordinate with the LG project and not perform an actual inspection. Answer questions, again, the whole premise is to keep the project moving. So we're not delaying the contract on a $100 million project. If he were to inspect at the hospital, he'll still get $30 per inspection to do that. So this is beyond a normal duty of an inspector.
And he doesn't get any type of salary or hourly type compensation, just the per inspection fee?
Correct. In this case, I would more or less call it a coordinating fee. So our building official, well, I have two building officials that, one is usually more available, but the other one fills in when needed. They're $75 per day. Now, they can make phone calls at their office to deal with questions that come our way. Or they could come in our office and sign documents, that sort of thing. And they might, throughout the day, answer 4 or 5 questions to the contractors or architects, whoever they have to deal with. But again, they get $75 for that day. If they make no phone calls, then they don't get paid. I think I signed Ted Manfres's, they submit an invoice to us, and I believe he had 4 or 5 days out of 2 weeks that he billed $75. So there were days that he didn't bill for time because he didn't work for us in essence.
So I was gonna ask that, that's, you're talking about item 12 in the payroll ordinance that you referred to adding 14 to?
Correct.
The difference there is 12 is just answering the phone and being a backup to the building official. 14 would actually be on-site inspection?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I have it written.
But-
The building inspector special assignment. So this, I want to distinguish
you
special
couldn't-
assignment.
But you couldn't just use number 12 now as a way to compensate them?
So, but number 12, we're specifically, well,
It just says backup, it doesn't really
but
specify.
it does say building official.
And this isn't a building official?
Correct, he is not certified to be building, it'd make my life easier if he was, but he's not.
Oh, okay. That answers that question. But it's the same compensation,
Correct.
so it's sort of like, I think I understand it.
I just don't have a way to pay him to do
Right.
this. 'Cause
I
there-
get it.
Again, he would show up on site possibly and not perform inspections, but coordinate
Mhm.
and review reports that the concrete tester may have done.
So
That's not a true inspection, he's just administering.
is
Where
it
if he were
possible?
somewhere else doing an inspection, he would be making money, but if
Correct.
he's doing that, he's
Yes,
getting nothing.
Exactly.
Well, yeah, I was gonna flip it though. Is it ever possible that he's on site and does 3 inspections?
Correct.
So he's losing money,
Well, so
or?
we also write a one-page contract with our inspectors, and Semino's reviewed this, so the contracts that we have specifically state their job, their contract is from January to December. We can terminate it, they can terminate it, they are to stick to the Ohio Building Code rules and regulations. We had an inspector once that let his certificate expire, he continued to do inspections for us. Hence, we have contracts now that state they have to stay certified with the OBC.
But my question was if they did 3 inspections
So,
in
I'm
one
sorry,
day.
yeah. So I have a line on his contract that specifically states, if he does 3 inspections, he'll get paid per inspection, not the $75.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. 'Cause- yeah.
But he's
With-
willing
I'm
to
sorry.
take the $75 over the 2 inspections.
With that, how soon are we looking to try to get this in place? It looks like it says to begin special inspections as soon as possible. Is he doing them now?
He started to do them, yes.
He has started to. Okay,
So I do think I had this as an emergency.
Yes.
I did have it as an emergency,
okay. To be handled next week?
if possible,
The
yes.
special?
say, if everybody's all right with moving that on, we can still discuss it at committee of the whole, but if we can add it to the special agenda, if that's what.
Okay. So we'll do that, special agenda for that. Okay. Okay. Our next item is a discussion of the fire chief salary. And with that discussion, that is an executive session item, and I'll make a motion that the Personnel Committee go into executive session to discuss the compensation of a public employee.
Second.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Ms. West?
Yes.
Mr. Moskin?
Yes.
Just the committee.
Oh,
Matt.
Mr. Harper?
Yes.
And with that also, maybe we take a 5-minute stretch break before we begin?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, let's take a 5-minute stretch break. Okay?